Hello, good day, everyone. If you can hear me, could you just give a reaction on the chat if you can hear me?
Yes, we can
Yeah,
hear you.
thank you very much. Thank you for that feedback. Thank you. Okay, let's just give 10 minutes for other people to join. So let's just give them 10 minutes. Thank you. So some of us can post on the mentees group so others can join the class. Thank you. Welcome, Rafiah. Happy International Women's Day to you and to all the ladies in the house. We celebrate the ladies and we thank God for using you guys to bring us to life. So we celebrate the ladies in the house.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Also
yeah,
the
good
men.
evening, everyone. Today is not the Men's Day. Today is International Women's Day. So wait for your own time. Good evening, everybody. Trust we are all doing great. Emmanuel, Oyimafu.
Yeah, Rafiah,
Okay, yeah.
well done.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for starting the session for me. Trust we are all doing fine. Yeah, happy International Women's Day. Congratulations. I want to use this opportunity to congratulate all the women. I know that there's also a Father's Day, or is it Father's Day? Yeah. Though I don't know the date. We seem to have lots of days. Olamileko, you have your hands raised. Yeah, thank you, everyone. And good to have you guys here again. As usual, it's the intermediate class, your M365 class. You do already have your mentor here, which is Emmanuel Oyimafu. He's going to continue from where he stopped last weekend. And I would say while we're waiting for others to join, if you have any questions, please drop your questions in the chat. I would also want to use this opportunity to congratulate those that have gotten their offers from Tech Knowledge, and those that also got the, do I say, congratulatory email from Hashim. I know some persons had been invited physically to come to the Hashim office. So I want to congratulate you all. So for those that are yet to write their assessment and also yet to do their interview, I know you guys have been scheduled for next week. I would like you to stay back after the class because you're going to be having do I say more like an interview prep after this class. If you're here and you know you were invited for an assessment or the interview, and even if you've also done yours and you're willing to share the questions you were asked, right, you can also stay back so you can share the information with your fellow colleagues, your mentees, your fellow mentees. So that'll be after this class. And yeah, so aside from that, I think that's the only information we have for you this evening. Please do well to stay back after the class if you know you've been scheduled for your continuous assessment and an interview next week. And if you also know that you've done yours, please, you can also stay back so you can share the all the different stages of the interview or possibly the questions you were asked, just so the people that are here to do theirs would have an idea of what it is like, right, and be prepared for theirs too. So we encourage you to go through the class recordings. That's the previous class recordings. And if you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to your mentor, who is Oyimafu. You can reach him on WhatsApp or on LinkedIn. So Oyimafu, without taking much of your time, I think I'll leave you here. And I'll be joining back later on because I need to take a break. But I don't know. Let me just confirm that Joseph is here with you.
Rafi, I'm here. Good evening.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, good evening, Joseph.
Yeah.
Busayo is also here. Busayo, I don't know if you heard me earlier. We're going to be having do I say a mock class or a mock session after this class, more like an interview prep class. Joseph would be here, myself, and hopefully Oyimafu. I did mention that those that have done their assessment with Tech Knowledge and have also done their interview with Tech Knowledge, please would appreciate if you can stay back after the class just so you can share your own experience with those that are yet to do theirs. So I'll be joining back soon, and Joseph is here. If you have any questions, please drop your questions in the chat box. Thank you for your time, and Oyimafu, you can have the floor now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Rafiah.
Okay.
And thank you,
You're
Joseph,
welcome.
for joining the section today. And I want to thank our mentees for always joining us every weekend. We appreciate it. We appreciate it for making out time to even join us. Thank you. And I also want to thank the Nigerian M365 community for this privilege to be among the speaker to talk in this great event. I really count it a privilege. So I don't know, before I start, I would like to let maybe someone should just talk about what they understand about Entra ID, or maybe an overview of what was learned last weekend. So I don't know if there's any volunteer. You could just raise your hands up if you want to talk, just to share your ideas so that those that did not join us last week, they can still benefit while I just do a little touch of what we did last week before I even do any demonstration. Can anybody just help out? Okay, no one wants to volunteer. Okay, so can you hear me loud and clear before I proceed? Hello? Can you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Uguma. Thank you, meeting guests. So first of all, I'll be going ahead to share my screen. But before I share my screen, let me just clear some things down on my screen. Let me take them out. So I will have the okay. Yeah, just 1 second to share my screen. Okay. So I'm sharing my screen now. Nigerian network is very wonderful. So let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So I'm using one screen. So, or let me still. Okay. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Emmanuel Oyimafu. I'm a modern workplace solution engineer. I work for Hashem Limited. So to just give a brief overview of what was done in our last class. So we talked about Microsoft Entra ID. And of course, Microsoft Entra ID is a Microsoft Azure cloud-based identity and access management service. So it's a service by Microsoft Azure that is used to manage identity, and also not only managing identity, and it also manage their access to. It does access management. Under the options, we have authentication. So if we talk about authentications, so those who get authenticated are staffs, like employees. Employees can sign in and access resources using Microsoft Entra ID. Then we have single sign-on. So single sign-on is a process whereby you can use your Microsoft Entra identity credentials to sign into applications, to sign into third-party applications using single sign-on with your credentials. And also application management. You could use Microsoft Entra ID for application management. You could create enterprise application. You could do app registration. And this moves us to business collaboration. For business to business collaboration, last week, we talked about how we could manage external users and how we could even invite external users to our organization, and also how we can even manage the access they have in our environment. And we still looked at device management. So today we are going to be looking at the security aspect of Microsoft Entra ID. Microsoft Entra ID is not just a platform where you create and manage users. It's also a platform where you secure your users to give them secure access to access your environment. So one of the ways you could secure access to environment is using Microsoft multi-factor authentication. So I'm going to explain multi-factor authentication using a scenario. Like, let me use these scenarios to explain it. So I believe we all are going to pick something from it. Let's look at, because to me, with my understanding, identity and verification started from the time past. It started from the time of the Bible. Why I said that was because when Jesus Christ was fasted after 40 days and 40 nights, the devil came to tempt him. The first question, when the devil saw him, he was like, if you are the Christ, turn this stone to bread. And his answer was, man shall not live by bread alone. So he had to answer him. So despite the fact that devil know that he's Jesus Christ, he still wants him to prove himself that he's really the Christ. So in this way, you now as a user, you have entered your username and password, but that's not enough. That's single factor. For you to now prove your identity, you have to either enter a code that is sent to your Microsoft Authenticator app. And also using that same scenario, the devil did not stop there. He took him to a high mountain and say, okay, throw yourself down. The angels will come and pick you up. And Jesus Christ told him that don't tempt the Lord your God. Like, don't tempt the Lord your God. So that's Jesus Christ responding to signals. Okay, the devil is telling him, just like you are trying to sign in, you are trying to prove your identity, you are trying to prove who you are, you want to put in your credentials. The first thing you do, you put in your username and password, and also it demands for second level of authentication. And this authentication is what you have. If you have registered your phone to Microsoft Authenticator app on your phone, you are going to either click yes or no, or you enter a code that is in your app. That's the same thing that happened in that scenario in the Bible. Jesus Christ, in this case, is not using phone for authentication or so to prove himself. He's proving himself by the word of God that he knows. So he's using the word of God to prove himself. And at the end of the day, he won that. He won that battle against the devil. So in this case, now we have multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is more or less like after putting your username and password, that's single factor. Your username and password is one factor. Then you using, let's say, an authenticator app after putting your username and password, that's multiple factor, meaning you're using password and also another level of authentication to access the network. Also, another scenario could be like you're using a bank. We all know that if you want to transfer some kind of money from your mobile app, it won't work. Like me, I use First Bank. If I want to transfer like 2 million naira or so, it will demand for a token. And if I don't provide that token, I won't be able to do that transfer. So it just work like multi-factor authentication. I've been able to sign in to my mobile app. Now, if I want to transfer 10,000, nobody will ask me for second level of authentication because 10,000 is not really big. But there's a level of money you want to transfer, most especially if you are exceeding your daily limits. That's when they will now begin to verify. Are you sure it's this person or is someone that got access to his bank account and want to steal his money? That is an example of multi-factor authentication. You have signed into your mobile app. Also, you now want to transfer high like big money, like something that is more than your usual capacity. Normally, if it was before, you will be able to, but because of a lot of things that has happened, there have to be second level of verification before you will be able to access to transfer that money. So another way, additionally, it provides additional security for your identity by requiring two or more elements for full authentication. And mostly is something you know, something you possess, or something you are. When we say something you know your password. Your password is what you know. Also, something you possess could be like your phone. In your phone you have the code. So with that, you'll be able to provide the codes when you are trying to sign it, which we are going to demonstrate. We are going to see how we could configure multi-factor authentication for users, and we'll see other methods which we could use to configure multi-factor authentication. Now, another one we have here is conditional access. So for conditional access now, you could use conditional access to enforce MFA for users, which is multi-factor authentication. And Microsoft is even advising customers to use conditional access instead of per user MFA, because per user MFA has been like, you can't, it's not advisable for you to use it. So it's better you use conditional access policy. So now let's look at what we have on the slide to explain conditional access policy. In conditional access policy, here we have signals. One of the signals is user and location. The second signal is device. The third signal is real-time risk, while the third signal is application. So these are signals that you could trigger these are signals now that could trigger you to either get access or require MFA or block access. Let's use an example of conditional access policy. Let me give a scenario of conditional access policy. For per user MFA, if you just want to enable per user MFA, all you just need to do is to just go to multi-factor authentication. You will see all your users. You could enable, you could disable, you could enforce. So you are not configuring any condition to access it. But for conditional access, you could configure conditions based on signals. Let me use an example. I'm in a company, and let's say I'm the CEO of that company. I majorly work in Nigeria. So where does conditional access policy comes in? Conditional access policy can say, okay, as the MD, if you want to sign into resources within Nigeria, allow access. But if someone is trying to sign in with his credentials in Saudi Arabia, block access or require MFA. Why are we requiring MFA? Because of we are using the location signal. If the location is saying that this person is in Saudi Arabia, and we know that our MD did not go to Saudi Arabia, the person is in Nigeria, meaning that somebody outside is trying to use her credential to assess the environment. In that case, require MFA. And we know that if we require MFA, there's no way the hacker will have access to her mobile phone. In that case, the person won't be able to get access. The access will be blocked. That is a scenario of user and location. So if you are using location, it's more or less like in your Entra ID, you are going to configure what we call named location. So for instance, now, maybe as a CEO, I have countries I travel to, like United States, England, and let's say Russia. I travel to those three countries. My admin already knows that I always travel to these countries. He can just create named location for me that, okay, if this guy is trying to access resources from this particular location, allow access or require MFA. If the person say require MFA, what it means is that once I provide second level authentication, I'll be able to access the environment and have access to applications. And another thing, you could also say block access. So what this block access means is that if you are trying to sign in from Saudi Arabia, block, the person should be blocked immediately. But you could also say require MFA. So if the person is trying to sign in from Saudi Arabia, require MFA for the user to access our environment or allow access immediately. Another one is devices. We all know that there are some devices that we don't use in our organizations. Some organizations don't use Android OS. They don't use Android OS. They don't use laptops that run Android OS. And we know BlackBerry is not common again. We don't use BlackBerry. We don't use all those phones. You could see if somebody is trying to sign in from devices of this nature, such as BlackBerry, some other devices that you know that maybe is used by hackers. You could block those devices in such a way that anybody that is trying to access any resources using those devices, block access or require MFA or allow access, then you get into the environment. Then the next one is application. So you could say anybody that wants to access our CRM applications or our business application, the person should require MFA. All these are just signals that you could use to enforce multi-factor authentication. The difference between conditional access and per user MFA is that it doesn't have signals. Conditional access makes use of signals to enforce multi-factor authentication. You could either use devices, user location, application, or real-time risk. When we say real-time risks, maybe for instance now, someone is trying to access his admin account and the person is trying the password multiple times, 10 times, 6 times, and it's failing. You could say block access immediately or require MFA. But the best in that scenario is block access because it means that the person that is trying to access that account is not the legitimate owner. Because if you are the owner, there's no way you won't be able to provide MFA to access the account. So the thing about conditional access policy is that it's used to bring signals together to make decisions and enforce organization policy. Each organization have their policy. There are some organizations that will tell you that if you want to sign into their network, you have to be on a particular location and a particular IP address. If you are not within the IP address, there's no way you can access their location. I've seen clients like that, that if your system network is not within that IP or within that location, you can't log in. It won't even work. It will block the access. You can't have access to their environment if you are not within that location. Then if you are within the location, it will allow access. But if you are not within the location, it will block access. That's for conditional access. And also you could use user or group membership. We know that if you want to apply any policy to anything or entity, you need to define scope. So your scope is like who you are assigning the policy to. Are you assigning it to user or you are assigning it to group? So in this case, you could assign conditional access to users or group. So you could just create a group in your environment, just like we demonstrated last week. We created a dynamic group, we created security group. You could create a group and put all the users that you want this conditional access policy to apply to, so that at the end of the day, only those users in that group we have this conditional access policy. Example, some organizations, we know some of our managements, they don't like too much issues. They don't want anytime they want to sign in, they should be requiring MFA all the time. Or they maybe because of they travel. Normally, staffs don't travel. It's only the managements that travel most of the time. Because of their travel, you could create a separate conditional access policy for them to allow the locations that they travel to. Then people that don't travel to that location, you can create a group and add them and define another policy for them that stay within Nigeria. So that's just an example. So you could use group to apply the policy and also IP location. So for IP location, it's just like what I was trying to explain the other time. You are in a particular environment and they don't want people to just have access to their applications or their M365 environment. So most of them they define a network location, and in that network location they will put the IP address range. If it is 10.10.1.0, they will put /24. So if you are not within that IP address range, you won't be able to get access to any of the applications in their environment. Some of them can say devices. If you are using so types of device, if maybe the person is using BlackBerry, this one is common to maybe mobile phones. Like you may say, okay, you don't want somebody using BlackBerry to be able to access your environment, or somebody using Sony Ericsson. You don't want the person to be able to access your environment. And risk detection. Example of risk is. Maybe for instance, somebody is trying to sign in multiple times, and the person is putting the wrong password. That's risk. So that's a very big risk actually, because that's a risk automatically, because automatically, if the person is the real person that has the account, if you try 3 or 4 times and it did not work, you reach out to the admin, like, hello admin, I forgot my password, please kindly help me reset my password. But if the person is an outsider, there's no way the person will be able to reach out to the admin. The person will keep trying, and at the end of the day, it becomes a risk detection in the environment. So that's for conditional access policy. Let's see. Okay. So we'll be going to the live demonstration right now. So if you have any question, you could just ask before we go to the live demonstration. So if you have question, please, the floor is open. You could just unmute your mic and talk, or if the question is on the chat, let me check.
Okay, let me ask this question.
Hello.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, my question
Hello,
is
good
this.
evening. You can go ahead.
Okay. The question is this. Talk about that's IP anyway, IP stuff. That means if person is in Nigeria now, they're using VPN to connect. Maybe he doesn't want to use IP, maybe all this VPN connection, don't want to use this. I don't know why. He just like to use a VPN. So that means the system will detect it as not the rightful user. Also prompts you to use multi-factor, right? Or you're mentioning person live in Nigeria, maybe go to UK for travel, that you're not in Nigeria, so they give you either allow or not. A lot of you in Nigeria are also using VPN connect, maybe using UK VPN to connect to the network. So with that thing, still detects you that you're not in Nigeria. Take it as that. Another one is device like you're using a version of Android. Maybe the Android they use now is like, let's say 9.0 or this for that, or 15.0. But you are using lesser version. That means they've upgraded the network. In that case, you still prompt you that, will it prompt you that you cannot get access to that environment, or what will happen in that area?
Okay, I like this your question. It's a very brilliant question. Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking that question. If you are using VPN changes location. And maybe for instance, some of us that we need free data. Sometimes to access those data, you need to connect to VPN. It won't allow you to log into the environment, because at that instance, if the location is set to only Nigeria, maybe your VPN is giving you access to UK or Canada so that you can get, it won't permit you to actually log in. So you will be blocked actually. So I think Joseph's chance is raised. So you could proceed.
Yeah, so yes, CJ, I think that was the question was from CJ. I just quickly want to mention that when doing conditional access policy, most organizations will not allow you to access the server from open internet. So even if you are working remotely, they can say that if you are not on a particular network, you should not be able to access those particular data in the organization. So the office will have its own VPN tunnel, and then it is that IP range you must be before you can access that particular resource. So this time you are looking at VPN as per location, but you can be looking at VPN as per an organization VPN that will say if you must go into office.com, the condition is that you must be connected to the office network. So at that point we must understand that all, like, internet is a network, but not all networks are internet. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. So the organization local network can be there, and then they can tell you that you must be on that tunnel before you can actually access that particular resource. So conditional access can be set in that regard, and not just per location, say Nigeria, say this or that. No, based on the office configuration as per the network. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, I think I understand this aspect. That's maybe you want to connect to the platform. Like let's say this have stars, we have. What you said, I mean, you want to connect to a network, maybe within your company anyway. Just like you explained. But the one man I was saying is that I want to know if you are in Nigeria. Some people use VPN in country, all this stuff based on that. The aspect you're saying, I understand that one. If I can get access to one, maybe some environment within the network, you have to pass through a VPN that will connect you, give you access to that platform, and then work fine. That's working remotely. Good, so trying to connect. But the one I have in mind is some people use what they call general, I don't know, VPN stuff, they're changing location. So that what really have so much concern.
So
Because when I see
for
that,
that, I can quickly mention that we can. So why setting up conditional access policy? We can. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Oyimafu. Allowed location. Yeah, that's it. Allowed location. So, for example, if we do not allow you to sign in from Nigeria, and then you are using US VPN, you'll be able to sign in. At that point, it is seeing you as if you are in that location, right? So for that one, you can actually dribble the VPN. I mean, dribble the conditional access policy that says you must be in the US, for example, before you can access a particular resource. And you are in Nigeria, but you are turning on VPN to say you are in the US, you'll be able to sign in.
the second one about the device, the version, the 8 points, the systems, you have to use 10 points. So what will you do in that case? Will they put you off, or you have to go and upgrade your device?
So, Oyimafu, should I go ahead and respond to that?
Yeah, you can go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay. So if I got you correctly, even though I didn't hear you like very, very well, today I was doing something on compliance devices, and I was saying that my device must be Windows 10 device, and it must not have the Windows Defender firewall turn off. So if I set these conditions, it's just immediate once it syncs with the device that is not compliant. So if you go to your admin center, you will see that the compliance status of the device is showing not compliant. So for the device compliance, there is no action. It's just for auditing. But if you now want that device compliant to carry out an action, say if, so conditional access policy is if then. It's just an if then statement to say, okay, if the device is not compliant, let it not be able to access cloud resources. So if you are signing in there and that device is checking against the conditional access policy to say it is not compliant, reporting in the portal, you'll be locked out. You will not be able to sign in. And the drama behind it is that when I was setting that up today, this afternoon, I forgot to exclude the admin, me that was setting up the conditional access policy, and I was locked out. So the only thing I could do was to now go and deploy a VM and then make sure that because I said that once Windows Defender firewall is turned off, and I forgot that I was using an antivirus that automatically turned off the Windows Defender firewall. I was locked out of my tenant. There was nothing I could do other than to go and deploy a VM that has Windows Defender firewall turned on, sign in from there as an administrator, and go and exclude myself from the conditional access policy before I was able to sync through and then was able to sign in on my local machine. So that's how it works. The device compliance status, bringing into conditional access policy is an if-then statement. If this device is not compliant, then access should be denied. Or you can say grant access to this device, but you must be able to prove something, maybe with the MFA that Oyimafu just mentioned. So that is how it works. Conditional access policy actually goes a long way to assist in, setting up permissions and accesses to our cloud resources.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about Outlook? Want to put Outlook on your phone? Maybe Office Outlook, trying to put on your phone. You try the process, you get a stage. Maybe having lower version of Android. So you get a stage, you cannot go further again. You have to go and upgrade your phone, or you change your phone. So how does conditional access work in that area?
Can you take that question again?
I mean, if you are trying to put your Outlook on your phone, you have it on your laptop, but you want to put it on your phone, you have a process, you have to pass through the stage. Now, just to say, it's okay, your phone is not compatible with that process. Maybe it's later version. I need to go to higher version. So in that case, you can't go further. So how will conditional access this manage that situation? Is it that no other option, you have to go and upgrade your phone, you buy a new phone, before you can go ahead, or you upgrade?
Okay, I think I understand to a point, but Oyimafu, please, it's like I'm taking over your conversation. Please go ahead.
Oh no, you can continue. You can continue.
Okay, so for me, there are some. I quickly just want to say there are. If if I understood your question very well, the phone is not supporting Outlook, for example, because your your OS is outdated. Like, how will conditional access policy handle this? So what you actually do is device compliance policy from Intune. So you can go to, if it is an Android phone, like you mentioned, you can go to Android, right? You can go to Android device from the Intune portal and then set it that set up a policy to capture. Let's say you are using Android 9, for example. You can say Android version 10 and below. I don't know how it will look like there, but I'm sure that if you pick like 10 and below and say it should be marked as compliant, then that application itself should work there, except it is truly outdated where it doesn't have like the capacity to manage maybe the updated version of that Outlook. But if you want to actually say that you want to mark lower versions of the OS of your phone to be compliant, to be able to access those applications, is just to set up device compliance policy. And then when you want to, then you can create a group from either Intune or Entra Admin Center. And then you are saying that it is for Android devices, Android for business, and then that the version must be this and below. Once those devices fall into those group, when you are setting the conditional access policy, where he spoke about the scope, so the scope will now target that group that you created dynamically to pick up Android devices that are of those particular versions. So once those machines fall into those group, and then you are setting up the scope of the conditional access policy to pick up that group from Entra, then that's how you are going to do those. You're going to do the setup. Except actually, like, the phone is really old that does not have the capacity to pick up the application itself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Joseph. Thank you very much, CJ. So I learned a lot from the whole conversation. Yeah, Joseph was knocked out. Wow. Thank God you were able to recover that account too. Okay. Well done for that. Thank you. Thank you very much. So does anybody have any other question before we proceed? On the chat, I could see that there's no question. Okay. Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen so we can just go to the demo section. So let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. This test user, you are very active today. Like, thank you very much for following up. Okay. So I just want us to look at the Entra ID, but for those that are joining us today, I wouldn't like to just go straight, just log into the Entra ID just like that. So let me start from the beginning. So first of all, if you want to sign into Entra ID, you go from either cmd.mx. Let me type cmd.mx. Sorry. From cmd.mx, you have access to log into any of the admin centers like Intune, Azure Preview Portal, Microsoft 365 Defender, Sentinel, Exchange, and all. If I click on Exchange now, it's going to take me to Exchange Admin Center. So it may not prompt me for password, but if it prompts me for password, of course, I'll sign in. So now it's loading Exchange Admin Center. So let's see. So this is Exchange Admin Center. but we are not actually doing anything in Exchange Admin Center today. But I just want us to see how we could use cmd.mx. It's a very simple command, cmd.mx. It takes you to a page where you could access all the admin centers. So we are talking about Microsoft Entra ID today. So let's just click on Microsoft Entra. Let's see if we'll go to Microsoft Entra ID Admin Center. So at least this is short and very easy for us to memorize and use. So let's just wait for it to load. Yeah. Okay. So once you open Microsoft Entra ID, the first page you see is the overview page. This overview page, now that's where you see the summary of what you have in your environment. The license you have, the applications, the group, the users, and devices. So you see all the devices you have. The next page, the next pane is users pane. So on users pane, if you click on all users, you are going to see all the users you have in your environment. So let's wait for it to load. In my own environment now, these are all the users that I have. So that's why I'm actually able to see all of them. So these are my users. Here under the users pane here, if you click on audit logs here, you will see the audit logs for all the users. All the users, you are going to see the audit log. Like we can see, test booking was trying to sign in. Oyimafu was trying to sign in. James was trying to sign in. All these people, I don't even know who they are, but I just know that they are trying to sign in. But the status here is success. Is success. So this is where you see audit log for the activities that is happening in your environment. If you come to sign in logs now, they are going to see the sign in logs here. So these are the sign in logs we have and the application that they are trying to access. So this is me. I am barely the only one that use this tenant, and maybe some other people that I gave access to. So we could see now that this person, Uchenna, he accessed HR solution. That is the application he was trying to access, and it was a failure. He tried again, it was a failure. So let me see. So James tried to access the same application and it was successful. So we could see some of all these things here. Maybe somebody tells you that I'm trying to log in, or maybe there was a case where somebody came to our office. He said, I tried to sign in and I put the right password and it didn't work. My account got locked out. So that person now, he said he tried once. From here, you could check how many times did this person try. Uchenna now tried 2 times. He tried to sign in 2 times and it was a failure. So meaning that probably maybe it's not using the right password or so. Here now we have location. So all these people now they are trying signing in from Core West Virginia region. So as it is like this now, this is the location. Although me, I don't have any conditional access policy denying locations, but this person is signing in from US. From US. So that's for signing logs. Then if they are deleted users that you have in your environment, you will see them here. All these users now, they are users that have been deleted. So anyone you want to restore, once you click on the user, the restore button comes up. But I don't want to restore any user here. So I'll just leave them. For password resets, maybe you want to reset password. So you could use this page to reset password here. So this password reset now is more or less like we're going to talk about it. I don't want us to talk about it now. So when we get there, we'll talk about it. So let me just go to the next part here, which we have groups. So for groups, if you click on it, you will see all the groups you have in your environment. So let's wait for it to load. So these are all the groups I have. Then if we come to deleted groups, just like users, you will see the groups you have deleted. Here now, I don't have any group that I've deleted. That is why we're not seeing anything there. Then for devices, if you collab devices, you'll be able to see all devices that you have in your environment. Like in the slide, Microsoft Entra ID is used to manage users, devices, and application. And aside that, you could also use it for protection also. So we'll wait for all devices to show. So let's wait for it to load. So this is taking time, but from all devices here, you can see all the devices you have in your environment. And if you come to application, that is where we have enterprise application and app registration. So if I click on enterprise application now, I'm going to see all the enterprise applications that are available for me to use. And also, if I want to create, I can also create, depending on the case study. So in Entra ID, you could also manage applications. Also, you could create enterprise application, or you could do app registration. But today, we are looking at protection. So that's where we're looking at. That's why we are coming to this particular protection page here. So the first thing we are going to do is we are going to configure per user MFA for an identity. So what I will do is I'll just click on the search bar here. I will type multi-factor authentication. So clicking on searching for multi-factor authentication, it just brings the service here. So all I just need to do is to click on multi-factor authentication. So here now, we can see use multi-factor authentication to protect users and data. So here now, this is more or less like a page where you could manage multi-factor authentication for users. So if I click on this page now, it's going to take us to, so let's just wait. So on this page here now, I'm going to drop it on the chat. So we are going to see how MFA works. So let me just drop it on the chat. So let's wait for this page to load. So sorry, my network is it's very good. So please bear with me. Basically today, we're just looking at how we could secure identity. So that's just what we are looking at. So here now, this is per user MFA. So this settings gives us per user MFA. We could see here that almost all my users, MFA is disabled for all of them. So nobody have MFA assigned to him or her. So I will just use a test user. So I'm going to assign MFA to any of these test user here. So let me just pick one person. Who am I going to pick? So let me pick Bill Norman. Let me select Bill Norman. Then enable MFA for Bill Norman. So I'll just come here, enable MFA. So I'm getting a notification here. If your users do not regularly sign in through the browser, you could send them this link to register for MFA. So for the first time now, if you want your user to register for MFA, you could use this link to register them for MFA. So they can even register themselves, like they can set up their authenticator app themselves. That's why Microsoft is saying that if your users do not regularly sign into the browser, it's only when you want to sign into the browser that you can configure MFA. But if the person doesn't sign into the browser, send them this link, https ake.ms/MFA setup. They will be able to set up MFA. So I'll just click on enable for that user. And if I wait for the page to refresh, I will see that Bill Norman, the MFA has been enabled for him. So let me refresh the page. Then we'll use Bill Norman to sign in. Let's see if it's still going to, if it will go in successfully without using multi-factor authentication. So this is how to configure per user MFA. This one now, you are configuring it for a single user, like per user MFA. So you could configure for bulk users also. So let me look for Bill. So MFA has been enforced for Bill Norman. So let me try to sign in with Bill Norman. Let's see if it's going to be required for multi-factor authentication. So first of all, I don't have Bill Norman's password. So I'm going to reset his password from the admin center. All I will just do is I'll come to all users. Then from all users, I will look for Bill Norman and click for him. So sometimes in organizations, maybe you want to reset password for anybody. This is how you reset password for a user. So once it loads, I'll just click on reset password. So I'll click on reset. Then this is the temporary password that I'm going to use. So I'll just copy this password and also I'll copy his email address. So for me to sign in now, all I will just need to do is to click on the private window here, then go to office.com. Then I'll click on sign in. Then I'll now impute his username first. Then I'll now go next. So this one now is single factor authentication. You are just using password. So when it comes to multi-factor authentication, after putting your password, it will require another authentication method. We can see it's already saying that verify your identity. So automatically, this phone number has been configured by Bill Norman. So in his account, this phone number is already there. That is why it's saying it should receive a text. So if I click on text now, so I'm going to receive an SMS now on my phone to sign in. So let me just put the code 742419. So this is second level of authentication. I've put my password and it's asking me for another level of authentication. Now, let me put the current password that I have. Put it here. Then I will now put a new password. I'll click on sign in. So this guy now have access. But first of all, he has to like prove his identity. So had it been this guy, maybe he has not set up MFA before, or there's no authentication method in his account, he will be able to we'll set it up afresh for him. So let's say, for instance, now I want to add another authentication method to this guy's account. So this is what I will just do. Let me go back and get that link for MFA setup. Let me see. multi-factor authentication. Then configure. Let me enable for Babatunde. So I'll just use the opportunity to get the link. So I just want to copy this link out. Okay, it's asking me to sign in, but I don't want to configure MFA for this account. So let me just keep it. Okay, okay. So now if you ask me to sign into any account, so I'll click on, so this more or less like this user now, he doesn't always sign into the web, but I had to send him that MFA registration link so he could register MFA by himself. So I'll just click on his account. Let's see where it's going to take us to. So now it took us to my signing. So we'll just wait for it to load. So now we are in security info. So one advantage of having multiple signing method is that maybe, for instance, God forbid, this phone gets misplaced. If, for instance, I have another authentication type, after putting my password, I can use that method to sign in. Then I can use that method to sign in without maybe disturbing the admin. That's why having multiple authentication method is actually okay. So I'm just going to click on add sign-in method. So if you ask me for, do I want to use Microsoft Authenticator app, add token, email, or app password? So I'll just select Microsoft Authenticator app. Then it will tell me on your phone, install Microsoft Authenticator app. I already have it on my phone. So I'll just say next. Then I'll say next. So now I'm going to scan this image. On scanning this image, I'm going to open Microsoft Authenticator app on my phone. So I'm looking for the app. 1 second. Why am I always looking for this app all the time? Okay, I've seen it. So let me just scan the code. So if you want to do it on Microsoft Authenticator app, you will see a plus sign at the top. Once you click on it, you will see scan URL. Once you scan it, then you click next. So now it's telling me to type this number. So I'll just type 59. So once I type it, automatically it will work. So notification has been approved. So I'll just click next. Now I have three sign-in methods. So if I want to sign in now, the first thing is using my password first. After using my password, it's actually prompts me for text message that a notification have been sent to your phone. So send the code so you could have access. So automatically, as soon as I inputted that code, I went in. If, for instance, now I don't have, let's say, I don't have my phone with me at that time, or maybe this SIM card is in another phone, and the authentication app is in another phone that I have, I can just use Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator. So that is one advantage of having multiple sign-in methods. So if you want to configure it yourself, you could use this link. Let me drop it on the chat. So that's the link to configure MFA. So once you click on it, it takes you to security info, and you could add additional sign-in methods that you like. So like as I was trying to explain, this guy now have three factor. Maybe he can sign in using 3 factors, either using password. Password is the first one, then using phone or using Microsoft Authenticator app, depending on the configuration of the organization. So let's go back to the admin center. So now we have been able to set up per user MFA. So the next thing we want to look at now is setting up conditional access policy. So if you have any question regarding per user MFA, kindly ask. So we'll treat it before we go to the next part. Okay, somebody say, if you do not see the plus sign, does it mean that Authenticator app didn't download well on your phone? Okay, let me go back to that page. So here now, if you do not see the plus sign to add sign-in method, which account are you using? Are you using a work or school account or your personal account? So it depends. You should be able to see the plus sign, which account you are using. You should be able to see the plus sign. Maybe after this call, chat me up on WhatsApp. Let's look at it together. So this brings us back to Microsoft Entra ID Admin Center. On Microsoft Entra ID Admin Center now, we are going to go to protection. If we drop down protection, that is where we will see conditional access policy. But before we even go to conditional access policy, I would like to show something because it's very important in organizations, because there are some people that will tell you that I changed my phone number. So if somebody changes phone number, what it means is that you should be able to change the person's phone number from the admin center, so that if the person is trying to sign in, the phone number will change. It will not be seeing the old phone number. So for you to do that, we have configured multi-factor authentication for Bill Norman. I'll just click on Bill Norman's profile here. Then under Bill Norman's profile, I'll come to authentication methods. So we have different settings here I can see for Bill Norman. If I click on groups, I'll see the groups that Bill belong to. If I click on assign role, I'll see all the role that has been assigned to Bill. So let me click on authentication methods. So we'll see the methods that this guy has. So now we can see that this guy is using this phone number and is using iPhone 13 Pro. So this iPhone 13 Pro is the phone I just used to set up Microsoft Authenticator app. Let's take, for instance, this guy, God forbid, misplaced this phone, and the person is unable to, he misplaced the phone and this phone number as well, meaning that the person won't have access to sign in at all. Because if the person is signing in, the person has to use multi-factor authentication as the person in charge of the environment. All you just need to do is to come here, you click on this guy, you click on the phone number. Okay, let me go back again. You click on the phone number, you click on these 3 dots close to the phone number here. Then you say edit. You can now put in the person's new phone number. Maybe the person has changed phone. So this could be that maybe the person did not misplace his phone. Maybe the person changed his phone. From authentication methods, you could actually change the phone number of the person. But in this case, I'm not changing this phone number. Let me just click on close. But if you want to change it, you can change it. On the Microsoft Authenticator app also, once you click on it, this one, you can't change it. The only thing you can do, you can delete. It's only phone number that you can edit. But for Microsoft Authenticator app, it's either you delete. So all you need to do now is click on delete. Once you click on delete, this authentication method is gone. One thing I like about Microsoft, they will always show you a warning sign. This user will no longer be able to authenticate using this Microsoft Authenticator. That means if you are deleting, maybe for instance, the person misplaced his phone and he bought a new phone, and the person wants to register his new phone to his Entra ID account. Firstly, you could just come here and delete the phone. So once you delete it, you will now let's wait for it to delete. Let's just wait for it to load and delete. So now that method is gone. So you could not come here and say require re-register multi-factor authentication. If I say require, let me even, if you delete this, if I say require re-register multi-factor authentication, it said this will deactivate hardware oath token and delete the following authentication method from this user's phone number. So automatically, best practice, if somebody misplaces phone and the person wants to, maybe the person wants to like reconfigure his MFA, just come here and say require re-register multi-factor authentication. What it means is that this user will go through the process again to re-register for multi-factor authentication. By then, you have verified that it is the person, maybe because of what happened, that's why. So that is how to see authentication, the authentication methods from admin center, and how to enable multi-factor per user MFA for a user. So the next thing we are looking at here is conditional access, or what we have been explaining. I and Joseph, we have been trying to explain it. So let's look at it in demonstration, how to create conditional access policy. Yeah, there we go. Under conditional access policy page, we have the overview. So always in the overview page, it always gives you the summary of everything you have in that particular console. So under the overview page, we have policies. So for policies here now, I already have two multi-factor authentication policy set up. I have conditional policy. This one, the state is off. Then I have MFA for users. The state is on. So first of all, if you want to create a new policy, let me go over it again. Let me refresh this page. So we are going to see the difference between conditional access policy and per user MFA. Okay, so the same thing. Under protection, that is where you will see conditional access policy, because it's a method of protecting the user. So let's forget about all this diagram. So protection is you are actually creating a means whereby you can protect the identity of your user. So let me click on conditional access policy again one more time. So we can see overview. From overview, if we come to policy, we will see all the policies we have. We have conditional policy and we have MFA for users. So if I click on this MFA for users now, we are going to see the settings in this policy. So let's wait for it to load. So if you are creating a new conditional access policy, it will still look like this. So first of all, you are going to name your policy. Then under the users now, that is where you specify the users that you want the policy to have effect on. Then under conditions, you specify the conditions. So I would like us to create a new policy directly so we all will understand how to create conditional access policy. So from new policy, we are going to give it a name. Let's give it M365 underscore community underscore policy. So thank God it's accepted the name. In case you are creating your own and it didn't give you this check mark, it means that it did not accept it. So firstly, let's be careful if we are using the test tenant to create conditional access policy. So we don't go and lock everybody out. But I don't think any of us have the access to actually create this, because it's if you go and create conditional policies and you lock everybody out, it's going to be a challenge. But although with the help of Microsoft, we can still regain the tenants back. Under the assignments now, when we say assignments, this is where you define the scope, the people that you want this policy to take effect on. Like we made mention in the slide, you could assign the policy to users and group. So if I click on users now, I'm going to see all users. Then I can select users and group. If I say all users, what it means is that everybody, and I'm already getting this one in here, don't lock yourself out. This policy will affect all of your users. We recommend applying a policy to small set of users first to verify it behaves as expected. So like the warning sign Microsoft is giving us here, before you enforce any policy to all users, be careful. I remember when we're doing our training section then, so one of us actually used conditional access policy to lock everybody out, everybody in the account. And it was by the help of Microsoft that we were able to get that account back. So in enabling conditional access policy, we have to be very, very careful. It's not something that you just go and create like that. So one has to be careful and apply the right measures. So instead of applying it to all users, you say selected users. I can say users and group. So if I select users and group now, there are 3 options here. So let me go back. Let me close this guy so that we'll explore those options. There are 3 options here. The first option is guest and external user. So if I select this, it's going to ask me for either are there B2B collaborator guest users, business to business collaboration member users. So you have several options that you can set. If I say B2B guest user now and say okay, if I click on this page here now, let's see. Let's wait while it loads. So you could be able to select the users, but it didn't really give, so it automatically checked users again. So, but that's not what I want, but let's just uncheck it. So under users and group now, you could select either users or group. So let's see. So here now, the all is showing both users or group. So if you want to group it, if I click on users now, these are all the users I have in my environment. So I want to apply this policy to few users. Let me apply this policy to, who will I apply this policy to now? Let me apply this policy to, I want a cloud only account. Let me apply this policy to group 1. Then click on select. So now I'm applying this policy to only group 1 because I don't want to apply the policy to everybody. And another thing, you can apply the policy to all users and exclude. So if I come here now, let's say I say all users, I can say all users, then click on exclude here, then select users and group. Then I'll now type for my name so that I can exclude myself from the policy. I'll just select this one and say select. So automatically what it means is that I'm excluding users and group. I'm excluding just this guy. So that's how the policy is. But in this case, I don't want it to be like that because like but in a production environment, normally you enforce it to all users. Then you exclude the users that you don't want the policy to be applied to. Example of users you can exclude is maybe, for instance, you have AD Connect in your environment, Entra ID Connect. The service account for Entra ID is not supposed to have MFA. So you could just come here and exclude that service account. Let me show us an example of such account. If I click on one user now, I can be able to add more users. So let me select sync. So this is an example of a what was the name of this account again? A synchronization service account. So you can just check all this. Maybe for instance, in your environment, you could check all this because if you don't check it, you will be having synchronization error. Your users will not be synchronizing to Entra ID. So that is how you can exclude some users. And also, that's if you select all users here, you could use the exclude button to exclude some people that you don't want this policy to be enforced on. But in this case, I just want to select specific users and group so that we can test. I'll just click on select users and group. Then I go to users and groups, so I can select specific users that I want. So I can just say I'm using these 3 groups for the test. Group 1 is already selected, so I can't select it again. Let me select group 2 and select group 3. If I scroll down now, it will show me all the users I've selected. This conditional policy now is affecting just these 3 users. But if I say all users, that means it's affecting all users in my organization. So let's go to the next options, which is target resources. So now, what this target resources is more or less like these users now, for them to be required of multi-factor authentication. This target resources now is more or less like a signal. When we're talking the other time, we're making mention of signals. Okay, what signal will you get for the user to be required to use the MFA? I can say, okay, for target resources now, I will select it and say, okay, all resources. If I say all resources, what it means is that they are giving me another warning sign again. Don't lock yourself out. This policy, in fact, impact Azure Portal. Before you continue, ensure that you or someone else will be able to get back into the portal. So that's why all these things you have to be careful. And that's why I like Microsoft. They always tell you that this can happen. So here now, let me say select resources. So I will be able to select specific resources of my choice. So I'll just click on select here. So I will now see all the resources that I can actually use MFA for. Let's just wait for it to load. So it's loading. So sorry about my network. So let's just wait for it to load. It's taking time to load. So let me close it and try again. So it's loading. Let's just give it some time to load. So if you have any question, you can be dropping it on the chat so that at least you won't forget. So just drop it on the chat. So now, these are the resources I can select. The resources. I'll select Office 365. Then I'll look down and select. Let me select Dynamics. And let me select HR solution. So you can select the resources you have. You could say if they want to access Office 365 mover. What this means is that if this user want to access office.com, it should require MFA. It should require multi-factor authentication. So I'm okay with these three, with these 4 resources I've selected. I'll just say select and wait for it to save. So it's already telling me that I selected 4 resources. So the next option now is network. So if I click on network, this is where I'm going to be able to specify, like the question our guy was asking, OJ, CJ. So this way you can specify that. So for network now, if I click on yes, it say control user access based on their network or physical location. Like Joseph was explaining, you could use network if this person is not on this on the company's VPN, the person should not be able to access these resources. So this is where it comes in. If you say yes now, if you click on yes here, you could pick any of these settings. You could say any network or location, include all network and location. So if you say all network, what it means is that this for these users to access these resources, they can access it from all trusted network and location, or you can say from any network and location. But in this case, if we say selected network, what it means is that we are going to choose the particular network that we want them to be on. So here now we have named location that have been configured. Before you create multi-factor authentication and use either countries or let's say IP address range, you have to have specified it before you come to create the multi-factor authentication. But in this case, you could just say, okay, if the person is trying to sign in from Morocco, so Morocco now is a country, you are using location. While for network, you have to use IP address range. So for this case now, let's just leave this part. Let's just say any network location. But if you want to restrict your users to only specific company network, this is how you can do it. This is how you can do it. So after this creation, I'm going to show us how we can create named location and IP address range. So let me just say any location here. Then under the condition now, I will now select condition. So the condition now is user risk, sign-in risk, insider risk, device platform, any location, fingerprints, authentication flows. So for the condition now, you could select any of these. Here now, the first option is user risk level is the likelihood that the user account is compromised. Sign-in risk. Sign-in risk level is the likelihood that the sign-in section is compromised. So we can see the difference between user risk and sign-in risk. User risk now is the level, is the likelihood, user risk level is the likelihood that the user account is compromised. Just like when somebody is trying to sign in to their account multiple times, you know that something has happened. It's not that person. I can't be the owner of my account and I'm signing in multiple times, forgetting my password. So it's not normal in a real life scenario. So the next one is sign-in risk. So for sign-in risk now, is the likelihood that the sign-in section is compromised. Let's say, for instance, somebody is signed in and the person is trying to access things that is not meant to access. Of course, you know that that sign-in has been compromised, or the person is doing some illegal things. So you know that at least something is wrong with that account. So insider risks assesses the user's risky data related to Microsoft Purview insider risk management. So insider risk is more or less like when somebody is trying to access data that are for management or the person is not supposed to access. So here now, let's configure device platform for condition. Just like the question CJ talked about. So what we are trying to say now is apply policy to selected devices platform. So if we select Android now, so what it means is that this policy will be applied to Android phones, will be applied to Android phones. So that's the meaning. So you could select all the devices. You could say any device, then you exclude. You could now say, okay, you are excluding Windows Phone or you are excluding macOS. So you could exclude any device, but I'm going to leave Windows. I'm going to exclude macOS and Linux. Then I will leave iOS. So you can say done. So basically, from the settings, if we click on it now, for us to understand is apply this policy to selected device platform. So the condition is if you are using any of these devices, like all these ones, if you are using Windows Phone or Windows device, you will be required for MFA. So I'm excluding all these devices, meaning that if you're trying to sign in from macOS, you don't have an issue. You'll be able to log in. So I'll just click on done. So if you're not talking, please mute your mic. Okay. Okay. So here now, let's say client. Okay, here now, let's choose client apps. So for client apps now, you could say control user access to target specific client application, not using modern authentication. If you say yes, that means if they are trying to access all these client apps like browser, Exchange Active SIM client, or other clients, it should require MFA. So that's a condition that you can specify, but I don't want to apply it. So I'll just say done. So and other settings you could also specify. So if you want to specify user risk, if I click on user risk now, what it means is that if there's likelihood that this account has been compromised, require MFA. If I say sign-in risk now, if there's likelihood that the sign-in section has been compromised, require MFA. Insider risk, if there's any risk involves, like let's say the person is trying to have access to company's data, then require MFA. But the only one I configured was device platform. If the person is trying to sign in using Windows or Windows Phone, require MFA. So this one now, location is any network or location. This one has been configured from this particular condition here. So this is also a condition at the top. So for the condition, I say any network location. That is why here is saying any network location. So we could just say here now, since we have specified our condition, the next thing now is access control. So for access control now, I could either say if this user is trying to access these resources from any location and the person is using, the condition is the person is using these particular devices, block access. Or if I block access, that means the person will not be able to sign in. Then if I want to grant access, I could either say require multi-factor authentication. So this is where you can do multi-factor authentication using conditional access policy. In per user MFA, you don't have all these settings. All you just do is enforce it to the user. But in conditional access policy, you can specify conditions. So under the conditions now, we have several conditions that we can actually choose from. So here now, I'm saying that if this person is, but if any of these persons is trying to access their office application from any location, and the person is using Windows device and Windows phone, grant access but require multi-factor authentication. And also, I could also state some requirements like require authentication strength and require device to be marked as compliant, meaning that if the person's device is not compliant, the person should not be able to sign in. So every organization have what they define as a device being compliant. So we say the device has to be hybrid AD joint, the device has to be just Azure AD joint device. So depending on the organization. So but for my own case, I would just say require multi-factor authentication alone. But depends on the organization. Some we say require hybrid AD join, require device to be compliant, require approved client app, and so on and so forth. Depending, and some we say require password change. So let's just uncheck this. So these are the ways you could grant access. So if you want to grant, you could say require multi-factor authentication, and also you could say require authentication strength, depending on you. So, or not even you, depending on what the organization wants. So let's say select. So here now, we could decide to select the section. So if we say sections now, so for section now, it is saying that control access based on section control to enable limit experience within specific cloud application. So we could say use conditional access app control, sign in frequency, require token protection, disable resilience default. So all these are configurations that you could specify within the section to control how the person uses the cloud access at that time. So these are sections you could permissions you could create. You could either say persistent browser section, then you select it. But in this case, we don't want to do all this configuration. So we'll just close. So let me cancel. I don't want to check this box. So let me close it. Or let me just select. So under section now, I didn't select anything on that section. So basically, let me go over the conditional access policy again. Firstly, you name the policy. Then the second thing, you assign specific users that you want the policy to be applied to. If you want the policy to be applied to all organizations, it is best practice you exclude some accounts, because if you apply it to all users, what it means is that everybody will be knocked out at that time. So you have to be very careful when enforcing multi-factor authentication. Then the next thing is target resources. You could target resources that you want. Do you want to target the whole resources, including Azure, Office.com, all the accounts? You could also do that. Then if you have any location in mind, that maybe, for instance, like the example I give in the slide and the one Joseph gave, maybe you set a condition that if you are in US, you should gain access. If you are not in US, you should not gain access. Some people can still bypass that and use VPN, a VPN that has US access to sign in. And you could also use network location to define some specific IP range. So the condition is, we just selected two conditions here, which is any network location and if you are using Windows device, or if you are not Windows device or system. So the next one is grant access. So the grant is require MFA. So here now, I'm going to turn this policy on and click create. So let's wait for the policy to create. That is how to create a conditional access policy. So now we are going to see that we have three policies here. We have M365 community policy, and it is turned on. So before we test it, let me just show us how to configure named location. So if I click on named location, still under conditional access policy, if you click on country location now, let's say for instance, my MD always travel to United States. So the name location, I'll just say United States location. Then I'll come down here and type the location, say United States. Then once I select it, and another thing, you could specify multiple locations. It must not be one. Let's say my MD always travel to United Kingdom, United Arab Emirates, and let's say she traveled to Germany sometimes. And let's say she goes to Niger. And also she goes to Burkina Faso. So I could just select it and click on create. So under this policy now, if I click on it, this I'm going to see those locations here. So these are the locations I selected, Burkina Faso. So if you want to delete it, you can delete it, or you could just leave it. So the next one again that we can specify is IP address range. So if I click on IP address range now, you can either choose to, firstly, you have to name your IP. Let's say company VPN address space. So this is the company VPN address space. If I click on this plus sign now, it's going to tell me enter a new IPv4 or IPv6 address. This example here, 40.77.182.32/27, is an example of an IPv4 address. Why this 20A0/32 is an example of an IPv6 address. So depending on your organization, you already know the address space. Let's say I know my address space is 10.10.0.1 then /24. I know this is my address space. I'll just click on add. So what this means is that anybody that is not signing in using that VPN, the person will not be able to access any of the resources. So if I've done this, I can now go and configure my conditional access policy to select either using this IP address range or using this country location. So if you want to set a policy that will enable you to do IP address range or country location, you have to first of all create it first before you go and create conditional access policy. So we have other things you can play along with here. Terms of use. Terms of use now, we know how terms of use work. It's more or less like you want to sign into the company. Firstly, you have to read their terms of use. And terms of use is very important. It's important we read it because it can put you in trouble. If you are doing anything, make sure you read the terms and condition. Terms of use is more or less like terms and condition. So you could specify the terms and conditions from here of your organization. And also, you could do other things. You could review your sign-in logs and more. So since we apply the conditional access policy to test the test users, let's go and try to sign in with one of the test users. Let's see if our policy will work. And if it does not work, we'll go and edit it. Probably there will be something wrong. So firstly, let me reset group one password. So I want to sign in with another user. Let me sign in with a different account. So I'll use another account this time. Okay, we can see it's saying that your organization need more information to keep your account secured. What it means is that that conditional access policy has applied to this guy because in setting up the policy, I selected group 1, group 2, group 3. So if I click next now, it's going to ask me for multi-factor authentication. Why it's asking me to set up MFA is because from the resources, I said if you want to access Office 365, anything Office 365, and we know that all Microsoft software as a service applications are embedded in Office 365, such as Exchange Online, different Outlook, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams. So if the person wants to sign into office.com as a whole, require MFA. So that is why when I went to office.com, I put in my password, it's required asking for MFA. So I'll just click on next. Then I'll click on next since I've already downloaded the Authenticator app. So I'm going to register this account also. So let me add it. So if you want to do all this, you could just, if you have the Authenticator app, you could just use it. So I'll just click on next. So let's wait. So it's already giving me the option on my phone. I'll just type 40. So imagine it's not me. Maybe it's somebody that wants to sign in. So it won't work because automatically that person doesn't have access to my phone. Even if you know my password, let's say for instance, you saw me typing my password and you were able to steal my password, still, you won't still be able to have access. So that is one advantage of multi-factor authentication and conditional access policy. So conditional access policy is actually the best way of enforcing MFA because why? You could specify a lot of conditions in enforcing it. So it's better we use conditional access policy. And Microsoft know that if they did not deprecate per user MFA, people will still be using it. So it's very important. So we could see now that because this guy have set up MFA, he now have access to his accounts. So let's move to the next item for the day, which is still under protection. We are going to look at authentication methods before we go to password resets. So for authentication methods now, I want us to focus on password protection. So password protection is very important because we know that some users, Ugoma, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. I didn't want you to just, go from the conditional access. I was going to ask, somebody can be in more than one group and you put the person on conditional access in all those groups. What if, would there clash?
Okay, let's say somebody is in more than one groups, right?
Yes, sir. And
Okay,
you did the policy in the two groups.
okay,
Maybe two clash.
okay, okay, this is it. So you see those group, that group, it's not actually a group,
Yes, sir.
it's a user account. I just named it group. So it's not a group. But let's take, for instance, you want to apply policy to a group. As admins, we have to ensure that the group we're assigning the policy to contains the users that we want that policy to apply to. So you could use query. You could use any of the dynamic query to say, okay, if this user is in this department, you can create conditional access policy for using departments or using different signal for groups. So in my own case, I selected 3 groups. I understand why you asked that question because you'll be like, okay, what if there's clash in the group? Maybe somebody is in this group and the person is in this group. So long, even if, for instance, I selected 3 groups and the person belongs to those 3 groups, the policy will still affect the person. So it won't say, okay, because this person is in 2 groups, it won't apply to the person. So it will apply, it will still affect that person. So that's one thing about conditional access policy. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So I saw somebody hands raised again. So I don't know if you want to still ask your question. So Omo, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think I'll just wait in maybe after the class. I wanted to ask initially, but you've answered. But I have another question to ask. It's just clarity. Maybe I can wait in the end of the class. Yes.
Okay,
Thank you for.
okay, no problem. Thank you very much, sir. So thank you very much. So now in password protection. So what password protection is now is that we know if you allow your organization, let's say for instance, you are working in Forvis Mazars Group. Forvis Mazars Group is a company, it's a multinational company in different locations. If you allow your users, some of them can use the name of your company as their password. Forvis, Forvis Group, Forvis Group 123, Forvis Group, Forvis Group 819, Forvis Groups, and which is not best practice. And you know that even if you do security awareness for people all the time, don't use this, so don't use your date of birth, don't use your name. Some can say their password is Joseph Afeso 119, Joseph Afeso 080. Those things, an hacker can easily hack that kind of password because that password is too easy. It's too easy for somebody to hack. That's where password protection comes in, because some of our passwords are very easy. They are easily guessable, and sometimes all these guys, they know they sleep. Some of them have they have a lot of models that they use to crack password. They can just crack your password like this. Before you know, they'll just have access into your account and they will now go and be doing a lot of havoc. That is why password protection is very, very important. So for password protection now, we have several options. We have lockout threshold. So this lockout threshold now is more or less like how many times does somebody needs to put wrong password for the person's account to be locked out. So here now is 10, which is not best practice. 10 is too much. If I say 10, somebody can even hack me with 10 attempts. 10 attempts is too much for me to specify. Most times it's supposed to be 3. 3 is standard. So that if the person, or let's say 4, so that if the person tries, because why we say 4 is standard is because maybe somebody now in your organization is trying to sign in and he mistakenly enter the password 2 or 3 times and the account get locked out. They will now be calling you, my account is locked out. So that's why sometimes some people use like 10, but in a real setting, 10 is too much. Then the next one is lockout duration in seconds. So what it means, this 60 seconds, what it means is that the account will be locked out for 60 seconds, which is even too small. But my environment is not a production environment. It's just a test environment. I'm just using it to test. But in a production environment, all these settings are way, way too small. Then the next one is custom band password. This custom band password now, what it means is that Microsoft has passwords that are in their database that are known to be password that users are using that you don't know. Then that one, you can now use it so that at least it will be enforced to your users. And also you can still define password also. Like here now, we have custom band password on our own. I have Contoso, I have Precise Global. Precise Global now is the name of this tenant. I don't want users in my tenant to be using the name of the company as password. I don't want them to use Amebo. I don't want them to use Pass. I don't want them to use Jumbo. I don't want them to use Fail. So if we want to test this, I have to enforce the policy first. Because if I don't enforce it, we won't be able to test it. So the difference between enforce and audit is if I say audit, it's going to be giving me the breakdown of people that are using this type of password. But if I say enforce, if you try to use it, it won't work. It will tell you that this password has been blocked by your admin. You can't use it. It won't work. So that's what this setting is all about, password protection. So password protection is more or less like protecting, not like enforcing your users to do the right thing. If you don't do all these things, some people will just be using simple password like their birthday. Some we say 2004 October. Some we say 2010 December. Some even use something that is easy for an hacker to guess and hack them. So that is why it's not best practice. So that's the use case of this authentication method. Authentication method is to protect the passwords in the password of your users. So here now, I'm going to save it. I'm going to click on save. Save. But in a production environment, if you come there, you will see the kind of password, the kind of list you will see here. It will be even more than 10,000. But me now, I just did this one so that we'll just see how it works. So let me enforce it. Then here now, that's for password protection. So now let's go to the next one of the day, which is the last, which is password resets.
Okay, so I was just going to say that we need to be rounding off now. Thank you very much, Oyimafu.
Okay. So this is the last for the day. Thank you very much. I really appreciate. So here now, we are going to look at the password reset. So what password reset is more or less like, let's say for instance, in my organization, it's a big organization, and let's say we are like 10,000. I don't want users to be disturbing me, like sending mails, password reset, password reset, password reset. That is self-service password reset is very important so that you can give your users the privilege to reset their password themselves but there's a clause to it. So we are going to see the clause straight away. So for selected now, I'm going to choose the group of users that I want to actually have this enabled. So I'm going to select just one person so that we can test. So which group am I going to use now? I don't want to use a group that I'm there. So let me use this M365 test. Let me select this group. So this group of users now are going to be the ones that are going to use password reset. I'll now click on save. So unexpected error, saving, okay, password reset policy saved. So let me refresh the page. Let me confirm that the policy has been saved.
You are the one that will make it to start wanting to come up here again.
So if you are not talking, kindly mute your mic.
Oh.
So it's still loading. Let's give it some time. So now we could see that only this group is selected. So here now we have another option here, which is authentication method. So this authentication method now is where I'm going to specify for a user to be able to reset their password. What are the number of methods requires to reset? So this is where admins are very wicked. Let me use that word. So when we say for you to reset your password, you have to answer all these questions. You have to provide email, you have to provide mobile phone number, and you have to provide security questions. So the security questions now, if you want to use it, you could say, okay, number of questions 4, number of questions to reset password. Let's see. Now, if you want to register, first of all, this user have to register first. Now, the questions you register will be 4. Then the number of questions for reset will be 3. So depending on you, some will say 4, 4. That means if you don't know answer, if you are unable to answer the 4 questions, you will not be able to reset your password. Then let me just leave it as 3. Let's not be too wicked. Or let me say 3. Then this one, let me say 5. Then select security questions. So if I say security questions now, I could create a custom security question here. So I can say, let's say where, let me say which city. So this is a question that they are going to answer. Then what is your nickname? Then the next question is, which city did your parents meet? Then the third question is, which city were you born? Then the third question is, what's your mother's maiden name? Then we add it. Then we say okay. Then we say okay. So I've already defined the questions. So anybody that wants to register for password reset, for the person to reset his password, you need to provide your email first, your phone, your mobile phone, and you need to answer at least 5 of those questions. Then once you are able to answer 5 of those questions, if you are trying to reset, 3 alone is okay for you to reset your password. Then I'll click on save. Okay. So it's saving. So let's try to save again. Let's see. Okay, probably let's refresh the page. Let's see if the method I've saved. Sorry, I'm taking your time. After this one, that's the end. So tomorrow we'll continue from where we stop. So it has been it did not save actually. So the security questions did not save. But basically, that is how to do password reset. So if setting those security questions is very important, because if it's an hacker, there's no way the person will know the answer. The person may not know the name of the maiden name of the person's mother also. So that's just for password reset. So once the policy is saved now, if I come back to properties, now I'm going to see the users that this policy is applied to. So let me look for this group, M365 test. Let me look for users in that group so we can use one of them to test. Okay, there's no user here. So let me just add one person here. So we can just use that person to test. Let me add auto attendant. Let me now add him. Okay, let me add this guy. Let me select this guy. So let me refresh the page. So I'll just go ahead and reset the password of this user so that we can use the guy to test access. Let me check if it's a cloud only user. Okay, let me reset his password. Or better still, maybe let me just sign into the browser. Joseph, sorry, this is the last demo I just want to do before we sign in, before we call it a day. Sorry about that. So this one now, because this guy, MFA is not enabled for this guy, that's why it was just goodness. But let's see if it's going to prompt him to register. So now, organization need more information from you. So this information now I'm getting is basically because of the self-service password reset that I enabled in my environment. That's why I wanted those security questions to show. So with those security questions, we will know that the guy is trying to register for for what did they call it again? Self-service password reset. So we could see the difference. The other one, it was just taking us to authenticator app, but this one is requiring the person to set up his phone number. So let me just specify my phone number. We are in Nigeria, so let me just pick Nigeria. Then put my phone number. Then I'll just click next to receive the code. So I'll wait for the code to come. So once the code come, the code is 793607. So I'll just click next. So it will ask me for another authentication method now. So let's see if it will go. Done. Okay. Although it's so now I would like us to do something. So we'll try to reset the password of this guy. Let's say he forgot his password. Let's see if he will be able to sign into his account. Let me just clear this boss. Click on this guy. But basically, that's self-service password reset. You could reset your password when you forget it. So instead of contacting your admin all the time, so you could just use it to reset your password. Let me say, forget this account. So let me sign in again. So it's asking me for an email. So this is Blue Dive. So let me just enter this code. So now they say you can't reset your own password because you haven't registered for password reset. So let me say register for self-service password reset first. So he hasn't registered for self-service password reset. So let's register. Okay. So let me close for today. So tomorrow we'll start by registering the user account for self-service password reset. So before we continue, so thank you everyone. If you have any question, you could ask. So I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Good evening, boss. Hello?
Yeah. Good
Yeah,
evening.
thank you
Thank
for
you.
the class. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so my question is maybe, okay, in an organization where maybe we use a hybrid kind of setup, like whereby we have to create a user on the Active Directory before it now sync with Entra ID Connect to the cloud. So how do we activate self-service password for that kind of setup? That is the question number one. So for the second question, so maybe in a kind of setup whereby you are using only cloud only, so the self-service password, does it require any kind of license? Maybe the tenant needs to upgrade to a kind of license before you can activate self-service password for your user. I don't know if you get my question.
Yeah, I get your question. So your question
Okay.
is actually a very intelligent question. So the first question you asked was, okay, in an hybrid environment where we have Active Directory on-prem and users are created in the Active Directory on-prem and sync to Entra ID using AD Connect. So firstly, in that scenario, for you to be able to use self-service password reset, you need Azure AD Premium P2 license to start with. You need it to configure self-service password reset. If you don't have that license, you won't be able to configure self-service password reset. And also, you need password write back. In configuring your AD Connect, you need to check password write back. So with password write back, what it means is that if the user try to reset their password from the cloud, because of password write back, the password will be written back to the on-premise Active Directory. So that in that scenario, you could actually use self-service password reset for users that are created from on-prem. So that's the answer to that question. So the second one, I don't know if I've answered it. The license you need is Azure AD Premium license.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So does any other person have a question? Okay.
Yes, I do. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes. So again, thank you for what you do, and you're doing a very good job. And thank you for being a community lead. Yes, I appreciate what you do. Um, I would say you've answered my first question, although this one is not directly related to what you just brush up, but it's related. So it's about creating policies. For instance, I currently have a situation that I need to sort out, and it has to do with applying policy. For instance, the every user that maybe you give license to, the so for instance, when you create a user and then you have license and then E2 license, for instance, that's give them like 2 gig. I noticed that are coming back recently complaining that email your mailbox is full, your mailbox is full, your mailbox is full. I have multiples of them that I need to start archiving and the likes. And now, based on your Microsoft 360, so what will you please suggest I do? So I was given a task to prevent that process where it now becomes tight. I don't know how to explain this. I don't want it to get their mailbox to get full before I start moving or archiving their emails. I want to set the policy to stop it maybe at a particular level. They'll start getting that they need to archive or delete emails that they don't want or files that they feel is not used. So how can I treat that aspect? Sorry, I can take the question again. I can summarize it if I have spoken too much. I can just quickly come again if you don't understand what I said.
Okay. So I'll give our MVP in the house, Joseph Afeso, to actually answer your question. So
Okay.
Joseph.
Okay, so this mic that you're passing to me like this, was that question from Namdi? Or from
It
Omo?
was from Omo.
Okay, so if I get your question correctly, you have a couple of users whose mailboxes are now filled up, right? And then you have to now manually start archiving their mailboxes, their emails. And then these users have Exchange Online Plan 2 license. Am I correct?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so for me, I think the best approach to this is for you to enable online archiving for all of them. All right, so that when their mailbox get filled, then those older emails will just automatically be getting archived from it will be following FIFO, first in, first out, right? To be following first in, first out settings where as the emails gets coming into their mailbox, then older emails at some certain point will automatically be archiving without you having any intervention. And I think I'm speaking under correction in this second point, but I think even if one wants to ask now, what happens when the archive is also getting filled? So I know there's what is called auto expanding of archive folder or mailbox. So what you can do, what best I would suggest that you do is to enable online archiving for all of them. Since you said they are using Exchange Online Plan 2, and that is a feature of Exchange Online Plan 2. So this is more like a preventive measure, just to make sure that you are set for any of those occurrences. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, sure, it did. So, according to Microsoft's policy on archiving, the 7 days archiving or automatic policy, but we noticed that if an email is being archived for 7 days, it start counting. Is literally 14 days instead of 7 days. So you need to wait. If is, for instance, all the mails in the organization was supposed to archive every 7 days, and then somebody now dropped a mail today being the last minute. It will wait, the system will wait until that person's 7 days complete before it archives.
You mean
So,
for the you mean for the particular mail or for the particular mail? I mean the email boxes of everyone in the organization or per user.
per users.
So I'm not sure. I think at this point I'm a bit confused, honestly.
Okay, how would I say? So you, for instance, I created your user, for instance, and then your mails are automatically archiving. So my task now is to, before we get that mailbox full thing, is there any measures I can put in place? You mentioned that I should put the online archiving this thing on the exchange. Fine, I got that. But I want to know how I can maybe ask them, maybe stop them, something I can maybe block their login up where they will not be able to log in until they clear their email or whichever one. Is this something I can?
Yeah, I get your point, but that's not a resolution, right? Blocking someone from signing in just so he can. You don't need to sign in before your email get dropped to your mailbox. I hope you remember.
Exactly.
So even when
That's true.
I'm, so even if I'm offline, it does not stop email entering my mailboxes. That's why even when you are on leave, your emails keep coming, and if you set auto response, then those emails will still your auto response will still be working, irrespective of whether you sign in or not, right? So if I get your question correctly, the part where I mentioned that you just need to enable online archiving for this user. So the point I'm getting confused is that 7 days that you mentioned. I'm not sure I got that point correctly.
Okay, so we have like a policy that every mail that comes, after 7 days, there's a folder where it goes, and that folder is on archive already. It's not on your main email inbox and like, so they can just move them to archive so that to free up space for new emails to drop.
Okay.
Did you get that?
Yeah, I get that point.
Yes, for
So,
new emails to drop.
but that particular one is not tied to the user. Are you saying it's like a central point where the mails have to go, central archive for your
Yes,
organization?
for my organization, yes. It goes to the central archive.
That
So
because
of course, every user can when you go to the archive, but it goes every 7 days. So now, what I notice is that 7 days, if maybe 7 days is going to complete as an organization, and one person just receive an email, the system will wait, now making it like a 14 days policy. Meanwhile, it's now making it's now, I don't know how to say it. I was at some point confused that Microsoft gave us the solution that we can constantly every 7 days run. If in short, we even did like a PowerShell command to archive mail for users automatically. Even that one is not is not so effective. So I don't know. That's why I said let me just quickly throw it to the house. If there's any other thing I can do.
okay, so the mic is on for I think I don't have Rafiah here yet, but
Yeah, I'm here.
okay,
Sorry,
please, do you want
Joseph.
to throw light on that?
Yeah,
Because
so
okay.
yeah, thank you for that, Joseph. Omo, I don't know exactly what you're trying to achieve, but I know that when you enable online archive for mailboxes, or you create a retention tag or retention policy, it's advisable that you run the Start Managed Folder Assistant, so you don't have to wait for 7 days or 14 days. So if that's what you want to achieve, right, where mails are being moved before the 7 days, it's kind of you're manually triggering that action. So you should run the Start Manage Folder Assistant on the particular mailbox in question. That's the only thing I know you can do instead of you having to wait for 7 days. But aside from that, except we're not getting your explanation. So when you run the PowerShell command to enable archive for that mailbox, and consider the fact that their Exchange Online plan too, those mailboxes have the Exchange Online plan too, I would also highly recommend that you enable auto expanding archive for those mailboxes, because that will give you 1.5 terabyte aside from the online archive mailbox that just gives you 100 gigabytes. Enabling auto expanding archive will give you 1.5 terabyte. I don't see how that's going to get filled up. So then the last thing you do is to run the Start Manage Folder Assistant PowerShell command. So if you want that, I can share that link with you. You can go through it. And if you still have further concerns, we can have a one-on-one after this class if you don't mind.
Okay, that would be amazing. Thank you so
Okay
much.
then.
I think
You're very
I'm good.
much welcome.
Yeah.
Okay then.
Sorry for taking your time.
Not at all.
Good evening, Mr. Oyimafu. Good evening, Mr. Afeso. Thank you for this wonderful class. So I have a question concerning the self-service password reset. So I think it's similar to one of the questions one of the métier. So my question is that graduated authenticator, like using one single credentials to log in, maybe to log into multiple applications. So like when you do a self-service authenticator on maybe through Entra ID or Microsoft Office, and you're able to change your password, does it also reflect to your login when maybe you are logging to a system? Maybe it will reflect, or does it affect your signing when you want to sign on the system, since it's a single login to all applications? So I don't know, maybe you understand my question, or I should just try to repeat it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Idris, for that's your question. So we have what we call hybrid Azure AD joined. If your device is hybrid Azure AD joined device to Entra ID, so what it means is that the same password you're using to sign into the cloud environment, so it's the same password you'll be using to sign into your systems. So if your system is joined to, that's if your system is joined to the Entra environment using hybrid Azure AD join. So sometimes some organization, like my organization now, if I reset my password in the cloud, that same password is the same password I'll use to sign into my system, because we do hybrid Azure AD join. So if that is the case of your organization, if for instance you do self-service password reset to reset your password, because of password write back, that password will be written back to the local Active Directory. For sure, you'll still be able to use that same password to sign in to your system, just like you use the same password to sign into the cloud. So it will still work. So I don't know if Joseph want to add more light to it, or is okay.
So yeah, I think that absolutely answers it. So, and again, if it's weird that maybe your question covers to the point of if you were signed in places before you did self-service password reset, I mean before you reset your password as a user, if that is part of what you asked, when you change your password from one device within 15 minutes, if you were signed into other devices or browsers and you've changed the password already, it will sign you out of other locations and you need to sign in afresh. So that's how it works.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think that is all for the day.
So Rafiah, do you want to continue now? You're available now.
Yeah, I think that'll be all for today as regards the class for today, right? Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you, Emmanuel Oyimafu, for that wonderful session. Really appreciate your time. And Joseph, thank you too for staying holding on for me, right? That'll be all for today. But then earlier I had shared that for those who got the invite from Tech Knowledge as regards writing